What's up, Vetters? Patrick here with Vetted. Today we're talking about this. So apparently new information has come to light that the Travis Walton case was a staged hoax. That's right. Mike Rogers, Travis Walton's brother-in-law, who was there with him on the evening of his alleged abduction, apparently is saying this is all a hoax and it was staged by Travis himself and Travis's brother. What?
What did you think, Mike, when you saw all this?
From where?
Watching the bolt come down and hit him.
Well, all of the guys described this thing that hit him as being a very powerful bolt of energy, a blue flame. It's been described as many things by the guys there. When it hit him, it was powerful enough to knock him back. I mean, it was like he said, like an explosion going off in front of him.
Why'd you leave?
Betters, please hit that like button. That really helps out the videos. And of course, if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button, y'all. All right, Betters, so what's today's video about? Well, apparently there's been a pretty massive update, potentially, depending on how you look at this. Some shocking allegations that have been made against Travis Walton, right? The famous Travis Walton UFO abduction case. And I've got all the news. So one of the witnesses who was there, okay, when this happened has come forward with a bombshell revelation about Travis Walton and Mike Rogers. Now, before we get to this bombshell news about Travis Walton and his abduction case, here's a little refresher of his story. On the evening of November 5th, 1975, in the dense pine forest of Arizona's Apache Site-Greaves National Forest near Heber, 22-year-old logger Travis Walton was wrapping up a long day of work with his six-man crew. As the sun set and the group drove their truck down a remote logging road toward home, they spotted something extraordinary, a large glowing object hovering silently above the trees, emitting a strange, pulsating light. Curious and unafraid, Travis jumped out of the truck and approached the craft on foot, while his co-workers watched from the vehicle. According to the crew, a brilliant beam of blue-green light suddenly shot out from the object, striking Travis in the chest or upper body. The force lifted him off the ground briefly before slamming him backward onto the dirt road, where he lay motionless.
When I got up about here, I crouched down behind a log, and I could hear a sound coming from it. It was kind of a very strange mechanical sound, and I was kind of wrestling with the idea of being so close to this. I'd expected it to take off, you know, and running up here, I figured this was my last chance to, you know, to see this thing up close. But I decided I'd better get the hell out of there. And as I raised up and turned to go, I felt this numbing shock and blacked out. The guys in the truck said they saw this brilliant beam come out of the bottom of the craft and hit me in the head and the chest and knocked me flying through the air.
Believing he might be dead or seriously injured, and terrified by what they had just seen, the other loggers panicked, floored the accelerator, and sped away to get help. When they returned minutes later with reinforcements, Travis was gone. No body, no blood, and no trace. A massive search involving police, helicopters, trackers, and volunteers scoured the rugged forest for days, but he had vanished without explanation.
Why'd you leave?
It was blind panic. I didn't have time to think. I mean, we were already scared.
Did anyone think of going to get Travis?
Yeah, after I had left, I was driving the truck, and after I had gone down the road about a quarter of a mile, then I was thinking, and I had time to think, to stop what I'd done.
Did you go back?
Yeah, after a hysterical sort of a discussion among us.
What happened when you went back?
He wasn't there.
Nor was the UFO.
And no, it wasn't.
The crew faced intense suspicion. Some even accused him of murder and fabricating a wild UFO story to cover it up, especially since the logging contract had a tight deadline and potential penalties looming. Then, 5 days and 6 hours later, on the night of November 10th, Travis reappeared. Disoriented, dehydrated, and dazed, he called his sister from a payphone in a nearby town, claiming he'd been taken aboard an extraterrestrial craft. Under later hypnosis and interviews, he described waking up inside a curved metallic room with a bitter metallic taste in his mouth. He encountered small, grayish, humanoid beings with large eyes and soft, marshmallow-like skin who examined him silently. Panicked, he fought back, grabbing a strange object that resembled a helmet or tool. Eventually, he was led to another area where he saw a taller, more human-like figure in a suit before being returned. Dropped off along a highway about 15 to 20 miles from the original site.
When his companions returned to the scene, they found no sign of Travis. He maintains that he blacked out and came to inside a strange room.
I didn't regain consciousness very quickly. I was very groggy and in a lot of pain. But when I could finally focus my eyes, I saw these creatures standing over me, which just flipped me out immediately. I was pretty hysterical. I was screaming all kinds of things at them, and they started towards me. And I grabbed a thing off of the table there and lashed out at them, and they stopped. They just kind of put their hands out like that at me, and then they just turned around and left the room. And I was afraid they'd come back, so I was going to try to find a way out of there. I guess I kind of assumed I was still, or that the craft was still here in the woods. But I went looking for a way out. I went into another room, and as I was looking for a way out, another being came in, and this was a very human-appearing person. He led me out of this craft, which appeared to be parked inside of a larger building or a larger craft. He just took me right out of there, down a hallway to a room where there were some other people who looked like him. They put this mask over my face. It was kind of like an oxygen mask thing. There was no hose connected to it. They put it over my face, and that was the last thing I knew. I just blacked out.
Travis Walton says that the incident ended 4 days later when he found himself lying at the side of a road not far away.
The case stands out because all 7 men, including Travis, reportedly passed polygraph tests regarding their accounts of the sighting and events.
They did, in fact, see something which they believed to be a UFO, and that is strictly what the polygraph proved, that they did, in fact, see something. It does not determine that there was, in fact, a UFO. It determines strictly that they did see something which they believed to be a UFO.
Gilson said 5 of the 6 tests showed conclusively that the men were telling the truth. The 6th was inconclusive.
It inspired the 1993 film Fire in the Sky, which dramatized the abduction experience. To this day, the Travis Walton story remains one of the most famous and fiercely debated in UFO history, with supporters citing the multiple witnesses and consistent testimony.
He was on a craft of some sort, and he had contact with beings of 2 different kinds, or 2 different types of people, and they were very much like people.
But they could converse with him?
They didn't make any speech, no contact, either physical or mental. They didn't, no conversation whatsoever.
While skeptics point to potential motives, inconsistencies, or alternative explanations for what really happened that November night in 1975.
There are some people in this town who don't believe your story.
Yeah, but they don't tell me that to my face.
How do you respond to them?
I want to be believed because that is my reputation, and it is people's attitudes toward me through my life.
When he was hit by the beam, well, we took off and went up the road here.
That's the question. Why'd you leave?
I think if you'd have been here, you would know that. We left because it was just, it was such a thing to happen, I don't know how to explain it. It was just very frightening, and seeing Travis get knocked down like that was by something that we'd never seen before, and I guess you just say fear of the unknown.
That, once again, is the story. Whether you believe it or not is your business. What they saw in this clearing was to them a UFO.
All right, now that we're caught up with Travis's story, and before we get to this bombshell update, I do need to keep the mics on, y'all. So let me introduce the sponsor for today's video, Proton Mail. Let me ask you something for a second. A lot of big tech email providers say their service is free, but is it actually free? Because in most cases, you're not paying with money. You're paying with your data, your emails, your behavior, the things you click, the things you sign up for. All of that can be collected, analyzed, and sometimes even monetized. And when you think about it, email is one of the most personal parts of your digital life. It's where your bank logins are, your private conversations, work messages, receipts, everything. So the real question is, what if your email could actually be private? That's where Proton Mail comes in. Proton Mail was built around privacy from the ground up, with end-to-end encryption that keeps your messages secure, in a way that even Proton can't read your messages. You also get powerful spam filters to keep your inbox clean. And there are no ads, no tracking, and no companies scanning your emails. It's just email. Simple, private, and actually yours. If owning your digital privacy matters to you even a little bit, Proton Mail is definitely worth checking out. You could start completely free and use my link proton.me/vetted right now. You can find it in the description below as well. All right, so let's get to this bombshell update. Now, there were many people there with Travis Walton, right, when he got abducted, okay? Let's go over the whole crew that was there that evening. You got Alan Dalis, Kenneth Peterson, Mike Rogers, Dwayne Smith, and John Goulet. And of course, Travis Walton. And one more name, Steve Pierce.
And how old were you at the time?
17.
So you were the youngest one on the group?
Yes, ma'am. Mike thought I was 18. But
and that's how you got the job?
Yeah.
You had to be 18?
Yeah.
Steve Pierce recently made a post on Facebook, and I think you're going to find it interesting. Now, I want to give a shout out to Astral on X for bringing this to my attention. I had not heard about this, so I'm going to put a link in the description to this post so you can go read it for yourself. But shout out to Astral. Go give him a follow on X. All right, so here's the post in question. Now get ready. All right, I don't want you to get triggered. If you really believe Travis Walton's story, this may trigger you. There are many things that a person can keep secret, many dark truths that they never talk about or won't ever admit. And inevitably, they end up taking these hidden truths to the grave. Some things were meant to stay covered, and some things need to be shared, no matter how ugly they may seem. If it's meant to be known, the truth always has a way of coming out. The passing of Mike Rogers has finally revealed the truth behind Fire in the Sky and what really happened to Travis. Upon his deathbed, his last words revealed the ugly truth that has been the subject of much speculation for so many years. He revealed that the abduction was indeed a staged hoax. The whole setup was orchestrated in the disturbed minds of Mike and Travis. This horrible plot to gain popularity has ruined the lives of so many that were involved. I, for one, have dealt with the backlash over this for many, many years. It has destroyed my life and the lives of those that were close to me since I was 17. I have lived with the horror of what I witnessed that night in the woods. It has haunted me in every aspect of my life. I've lived with the tumultuous chaos every day. My whole life has revolved around Fire in the Sky, and to finally have validation that it was all a hoax has sent me on the road to utmost devastation. How dare Mike and Travis live with this secret all these years, knowing what it has done to the lives of those involved, not to mention the public. This lie is of epic proportions. How dare Travis gain popularity and monetary gain at the expense of myself and a few others? He is nothing but a liar, a fake, a phony, a thief, an abominable human being. Perhaps Mike had to confess so that he could finally have peace. But I ask you, what about my peace? My peace was stolen from me. and I've not known anything else in my life. I have lost everything I've ever had because I couldn't move past the trauma that this has caused me. John died believing this was all true. He too lived with the trauma, never knowing what was real. I hope now he rests in peace. As for Mike, you have a lot to answer for. And as for Travis, your day of reckoning is coming. And that is something I will take to the grave. Wow. So again, this is Steve Pierce, who was there that night with Travis Walton, claiming that Mike Rogers and Travis Walton designed this whole thing. So they hoaxed their friends as well. This is crazy, right? Many people have suspected a lot of things, but no one from the group has ever come out and said anything like this. In fact, they've always stuck with the story, right? That was kind of the whole thing. Apparently they had, all passed some lie detector tests back then, and everyone but one person, right? Like, it's just very odd, right, about this. So I don't know, right? They're saying Mike Rogers on his deathbed confessed, hey, it's all a hoax, it wasn't real, right? And that's Robert Patrick's character in the movie Fire in the Sky, his best friend, right? So him and Travis got together and faked this whole thing, hoaxed it. Now, for those of you who've been skeptical about this story, you're immediately going to, I told you so. I knew it. Makes sense. But for those of you that believe it, you may, he's lying, that sort of thing. I don't know. I, for one, Fire in the Sky was like, that movie, it's one of my favorite UFO movies. And that movie stuck with me for so long. As a, young adult, when that came out in 93, I was a teenager. It was so impactful for me. I'll never forget the abduction scene, like where he's on the table and that white thing comes over his face. It's like, it's crazy. I don't know. This is nuts. And I know people that know Travis Walton. They say he's a great guy. A lot of people have felt he's been very genuine and authentic. So it'll be interesting to hear his response to this, right? Because it's always been, well, these guys are credible. And so are they still, is Steve Pierce still credible now that he's telling a different story? Could there be some motivation for Steve Pierce to just make this up? What's more likely, that Travis Walton actually got abducted by aliens, or they staged it as a hoax? Now, something else that Astral on X found that was interesting to me, and I did a little digging, is there was this National Enquirer contest happening at the time for $100,000, right, for a UFO case. And some people say Travis and, Mike were trying to get that money, right? So they staged this UFO abduction and, we're trying to get this money. People say, well, that's crazy. They would never get involved with that. But they did. And in fact, they did take money from the National Enquirer. Now, it wasn't the $100,000. They took $5,000 from the National Enquirer for that story. They couldn't pass lie detector tests. So it sounds like they took multiple lie detector tests. And this one with the National Enquirer, they couldn't pass. And they got $5,000. Travis Walton got $2,500, and the rest of the crew got the other $2,500. Because, Travis Walton's the one that got abducted.
The National Enquirer has long had an interest in UFOs and in selling newspapers. They asked Walton to take a lie detector test and called in the services of Jack McCarthy.
I received a call at my home asking me to come to the Sheraton Hotel in Scottsdale and not to tell anybody where I was going, period. Well, naturally, I told my wife and picked up my portable equipment and left for the hotel.
A lie detector is used to reveal whether a person is telling the truth by measuring pulse rate, respiration, and blood pressure. Some experts, however, doubt its reliability. But after 2 hours of questioning and recording the reactions, McCarthy thought he had the answer.
When I completed my examinations, after reading my charts, I rendered the opinion to the reporters from the National Enquirer that the charts were deceptive, and that, in my opinion, he was attempting to perpetrate a UFO hoax. Well, the lid blew off the room. I thought his brother Dwayne was going to throw me off the balcony. He was raging like a bull, saying there's no way that his brother would lie. Those charts were very, very clear, obviously deceptive. Prior to the examination, the reporters from the National Enquirer, I forgot to mention this, asked me if I would have any objection ahead of time to having pictures taken of my charts, the equipment, and myself following the examination. I said, no problem. Well, after I rendered my opinion, the pictures were completely forgotten. They had no more interest in pictures. But what they did do, they went into an adjoining room and drew up a little form for me to sign, asked me to sign it, to the effect that I wouldn't reveal where I had been that day, that I would say nothing about this examination, and so forth and so on.
Travis Walton argues that he failed the test because he was excessively nervous as a result of his recent close encounter with aliens.
Despite his claim of being overly nervous, his reactions on the chart are in itself a disclaimer to that contention. He was not overly nervous. His reactions were normal. They were very deceptive. And in my opinion, he was lying and did not take any UFO trip.
Despite the controversy, the National Enquirer gave the forestry workers the UFO Encounter of the Year award, with checks amounting to a total of $5,000.
And what's interesting is, guess who's not in the picture? Steve Pierce. So I don't know, make that for what you will. Maybe he just didn't want to be a part of it. He was a kid at the time, so maybe it was just, wasn't allowed to be a part of it. I don't know. Maybe he suspected something during that time. I don't know. This is very interesting. All right, so what's also interesting is that this isn't the first time that Mike Rogers has come out to say that this was a hoax. After doing research on this video, I'm like, what? A few years ago, this whole phone call came out, allegedly, of Mike Rogers talking to this filmmaker and spilling the beans on a phone call, and it got released. Check this out.
All I can remember, is that we were talking in the woods one day, Travis and I, and I remember leaving a chainsaw on the stump. Okay, he had a saw, but he took his with him because we were talking about creating a UFO hoax. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how the UFO got there. Okay. But I remember that when I was driving the truck and he jumped out, it was all deliberate. It was all a staged thing. Okay.
Yeah.
And he ran up there, and there was something about the UFO not being real, although it looked real.
Well, basically, so
and of course,
what you're saying is, you and Travis together hoaxed this.
Yeah, Travis's brother Dwayne helped him.
I believe that.
Philip Plass actually suspected that Dwayne was part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, he was his protector, and he was saying weird things on that Fred Sylvanus interview. I have nothing. I don't fear at all for his life. I know where he's at.
I know that was really
that
was really bizarre.
And I thought all along that he was just trying to how would you say it? Make himself believe that his brother was okay.
So that was back in 2021, right? And of course, Mike Rogers comes out afterwards and tries to say that this was BS.
He called me up one day, and he after he sent that email to me, and he said that he wanted to talk to me, like in person. I said, okay. I had no idea he was recording me, okay? Now, whatever you've heard, whatever is there, supposedly that I said, I can tell you that, all I can tell you is I did talk to the guy, but I didn't say those things.
So he's saying he talked to the guy, but he didn't say those things, right? And there's also a couple other discrepancies there. He's saying that the guy called him, which the filmmaker is saying that's not what happened, that Mike called him, right? But regardless, Mike is saying it was essentially digitally manipulated.
I'm a little bit unclear on what I said to him, obviously, because I didn't record it, but he obviously did, and he's manipulated it since then. I mean,
Now, Ryan Gordon, the filmmaker who recorded that phone call, he also came out and did an interview to sort of dispel some of these myths, right? That he had digitally manipulated this phone call, and he was trying to say, no, Mike Rogers did say these things. And he went on the show with Erica Lukes. Okay, this is also years ago. And he had a potential opportunity to actually speak to Mike, and they were going to kind of debate or at least talk it over, right, on this podcast. And of course, Mike kind of bailed on the podcast, and Ryan was left to defend himself. So Mike went on first. He was going to stay on with Ryan, and then Mike sort of left.
It was painful to just sit there and listen to all that. And of course, I wish that Mike could have stuck around, had the courage to debate me on this.
And I find that interesting that he didn't want to face the person he said had digitally manipulated the conversation. And as it turns out, listening to this interview, you find out that Ryan, he came with receipts.
I want to say right off the top of my head, it was the 23rd of April. So what, three months ago-ish. And the following day, Mike and I had spent several hours on the phone. Mike was aware, and I have him on recording telling me that I have permission to record all interactions with him. I think that that's important here. The reason why is I was in the process of working with Travis Walton on selling a remake of his show, Fire in the Sky.
So there you have it. And like Mike said in that other interview, right, he didn't know he was being recorded. Well, Ryan is trying to say we had already talked about that, right? So again, another discrepancy from Mike Rogers. And, you know, this guy, Ryan, showed a lot of different receipts and confirmed them with the host of the show that he had sent them all this stuff, right? And it doesn't stop there.
On the day of the 30th, which is when that call was recorded, I had already spent roughly six hours-ish on calls with Mike. He would text me frequently. I have shared a lot of these text messages with you folks. He texted me just before 7 p.m. on the 30th, telling me that he had a secret that he wanted to whisper in my ear. And that I told him that I would call as soon as I could. You both have copies of those text messages. And I'm hoping that, again, if I continually ask you to affirm, because we don't have a way to show these, right. Is that accurate?
Yes.
That he's telling me he has a secret he wants to whisper in my ear.
Yes, no, I did. We did see those text messages, yes.
So he texts Ryan and says, hey, I've got a secret to whisper, or whatever the phrase was, right? Secret to tell Ryan, right? And then ends up calling him because he gets impatient. What?
The secret was what y'all heard on that call. So as I'm driving, I'm telling him to hold on. I'm going to show you guys something here. So I wear my watch on my right hand. This is the Apple Watch that recorded that call and my iPhone. So I pull over to the side of the road so I don't get in trouble with the police for talking and driving. And I'm telling Mike, hold on. And when I get pulled over, I say, okay, pick up where you were. And he starts out immediately with what I remember, all I can remember.
So Ryan's just giving a little background of how the phone call happened, what exactly went down, because Mike was completely changing the story, right? He's saying that Ryan called him. That's not true. Mike called Ryan, right? Mike is saying he didn't know he was being recorded, and Ryan showed proof that he did know he was being recorded, right? And then he tried to say it was digitally manipulated with the way that the audio recording starts, but that's because of how it went down, right? Ryan's driving to the car. He's not allowed to talk on the phone and drive in this particular place. So he pulls over, uses his Apple Watch, and then tells him, okay, start where you were, right? So honestly, these hosts were saying how Ryan was so, professional and honest about everything. And again, had receipts. And for Mike Rogers to say that he talked to Ryan, but he didn't say those things, right? Well, Ryan, again, brought receipts that Mike was fully aware that he had told Ryan that this was a hoax.
Now, I'm going to go over a couple of hard facts with you here. I believe I have also sent you guys the proof and evidence on this as well. But I'd like to read it, and this is what I wish Mike was around here. So we've covered April 30th, that he said he had a secret to whisper in my ear. Of course, I wish Mike was here. So if he's saying that he didn't admit to a hoax, or he's denying everything that we talked about, what was the secret? I wish he was here to answer that question.
Yeah.
And I agree. What was that secret then, right? What exactly was he going to tell Ryan? Sounds like he did, and maybe got cold feet. And again, Ryan made Mike fully aware, right, that one, that this had been recorded, and two, that Ryan was going to release it.
On June 8th, I emailed a copy of the audio from this recording to both Travis Walton and Mike Rogers. The intent of me doing that was letting them know roughly a month in advance that working together, we're going to be releasing this audio. I think that's really important for folks to know. Mike was not taken off guard by this. He knew that this was coming out, and we all collaborated together on its release. I think it's very important. And nowhere along the way, of course, did he mention anything about the call being manipulated.
So that's interesting. So both Travis and Mike Rogers were aware of this recording, aware that it was going to come out, and nowhere was Mike saying, hey, this isn't real. You know, they even went to the spot, and Mike was describing to Ryan how they staged it at the location of the alleged abduction.
On June the 9th, and I can show all of this, of course. Travis Walton emailed me back and asked me not to release the audio, as it had the very real possibility of destroying his 45 years of hard work. And that's a quote.
So even Travis was aware of this happening, right? Because again, Ryan was working with Travis on doing a remake of Fire in the Sky. And Travis was clearly like, this is not going to be good for me, right? If this comes out, you know. But again, Mike, I guess, trying to go out and diffuse the situation and just make up things about Ryan, allegedly, and kind of backpedal. It doesn't work out because Ryan has all the receipts to prove that Mike was fully aware of this coming out and knew what he had said. And in no point along the way was saying, I didn't say it was a hoax. That's not true. You know, fully aware. And so was Travis. And, you know, in this same podcast, Mike changes his story that he's been telling, the same one for 45 years, and Ryan caught it.
Just on this interview that y'all just did with him for the first time, I heard him say he didn't even see the UFO. That's a huge divergence from what he said for the past 45 years. He describes it as beautiful and all these things. That was interesting. He also said an interesting comment that he had a feeling something was going to happen, so that's why he took off.
And here's the clip that Ryan is talking about.
Travis was standing there with his hands in his pocket. He crouched down. He then stood up, and at that time, I didn't actually see what hit him. Okay, I had a lot of anticipation, anxiety building up. I just knew something was going to happen. So I turned away and turned the truck back on, released the emergency brake.
So the discrepancy is that allegedly, you know, Mike has been saying this whole time that he saw the craft and this and that, and then he changes it to he never actually saw anything and left because he had a feeling. But that's not what happened at all, right? Totally changed his story. Now, Mike's older. Right? So is it just sort of mental fog from just his age? I don't know. But this isn't the first time that this has come out that this was a hoax. And I didn't know about any of this, to be honest with you. This is my first time learning about all this. But apparently, again, Mike Rogers on his deathbed confessed again and admitted it was true, right? That he did hoax this. Now, you may be wondering, where did that come from? Steve Pierce made that post. And, you know, where did this come from? Well, Mike Rogers' daughter had made a Facebook post in February when Mike Rogers passed. And to be honest with you, there's a lot more red flags than this, because Mike Rogers also admitted to hoaxing many other things. So let's get into it. Shout out to Paranormal on X for posting this and highlighting some of the key points and other key points that I found in it that we're going to go over. So this is from Michelle Detras, who is Mike Rogers' daughter. On Friday, February 6th, my father died. We held his funeral this past Saturday, February 28th, 2026, in Snowflake, Arizona. His name was Michael Howard Rogers. He was best known for his role as the crew captain in the movie Fire in the Sky, and of course, for his role in that UFO story. And she went on to say, my father wished to confess several hoaxes that he carried out beginning in November of 1975. Yes, that UFO incident, one of the best known UFO stories in the world, was a hoax. One of his last hoaxes includes what is known as the Phoenix Lights in March of 1997, which he explained to me in great detail, including how and what he created the UFO on a large ranch north of Prescott, Arizona, the land belonging to a friend of his named Buford Bell, who has long since passed. So I guess he also confessed to hoaxing the Phoenix Lights? I have to admit, this is definitely a little strange here, and it doesn't stop there. When I asked him why he did not confess any of this himself, he said it was because he is terrified of going to jail or prison, most specifically for the Phoenix Lights hoax, because the military got involved to investigate what was definitely seen as a potential threat to millions of people. He said that he did not intend to fly his UFO over the enormous city of Phoenix, that its intended path was over small towns where it would definitely be noticed by some people out in the country. What? Fly as UFO? I mean, this does not sound like, a man that has it all together here. In any case, to the point of this post is to confess on behalf of my father for all of his hoaxes that he carried out all over the world from November 1975 till at least March of 1997. This includes several crop circles in England, beginning with an intricate snowflake design in 1994. So he's also claiming to have hoaxed some crop circles in England in 1994? What? Again, this is not sounding good at all. He wanted me to confess and apologize to the world for his hoaxes. Well, that's interesting. Now, you may be thinking, well, Patrick, clearly he just wasn't of sound mind, so him saying that they hoaxed the Walton cases, he just wasn't thinking right. But he's been right all along. Well, maybe not. Maybe if you can't trust what he's saying about the hoax, well, you should just dismiss that, what he's saying about the hoaxes. Then maybe you should dismiss what he said about that evening as well, right? It works both ways. So it makes me think, I don't know what's going on, right? Was Mike Rogers ever a reliable witness, right? He changed his story. A few years ago, he seemed to be of sound mind, right? But maybe this was all a ploy to sort of dismiss the other hoaxes, because if he starts admitting to everything's a hoax, then you're just like, oh, okay, he's just crazy, right? But who knows? And he's on his deathbed. But people take deathbed confessions to heart. That's used all the time in this community. In fact, people say deathbed confessions are the best because they're on the end. What do they have to lose, right? But then they dismiss a deathbed confession that they don't really like, right? So I do find that kind of interesting. I mean, when Astro posted this on Twitter, even Chris Ramsey had come out and said, oh, look at, yeah, but he also confessed to this, Yeah, but Chris Ramsey's also said on Area 52 that deathbed confessions are like the most reliable.
Deathbed confessions are huge. Yeah, to me, that's the biggest piece of evidence.
Of course. You're alleviating your burdens. You're alleviating your mind. You're not worried about any repercussions.
It's the most credible confession. It's the most credible, unless you're completely delirious. To me, it's the most credible thing you can ever hear from another human being. period, is when you're about to leave this planet.
Right.
What do you want to leave this planet with?
Right.
A lie, a joke, a farce, a hoax, somebody's cover up, some psyop. It's all very strange to leave somebody with that, but to leave them with that story.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
It's like, well, that just sounds crazy. But people say all kinds of crazy things. I don't know how it's any more crazy than to believe a spaceship flew over Phoenix Lights than for some dude to say he did it in a UFO. Why is that any more crazy, right? I mean, I think it's all crazy, but I'm just saying, right? We distinguishing between crazy and the UFO community is crazy in and of itself, if you ask me, right? Maybe this guy does have a UFO, right? People say they fly in UFOs all the time, and people take those stories. People say Travis Walton said he got abducted by aliens. Why is that any less crazy, right? It's just, at the end of the day, what we need is evidence. And we've had zero evidence of the Travis Walton case. And to be fair, zero evidence provided that Mike Rogers hoaxed all of this, or that Travis Walton hoaxed it, right? We just have confessions. We just have stories, like always. So where are we left? It's the same spot we started. I hate to say it. We don't know anything, right? So everyone's just going to put in the comments how they feel, what they think, their opinion. And there's nothing wrong with that, but nobody knows any facts. And we're left with the same thing we are always left with, which is just, you know, a pitcher of water with the hole at the bottom, and it's just draining out, and we're kind of screwed. So anyway, thank y'all so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys on the next one. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all. Peace.
Hey man, I've had 9 sightings in my life. And they were very fucking real to me. And I saw what I thought was the top of a tree flying along the highway while I was driving to work one day. I had quite a bit of sightings while I was driving to work, because I was a terrible driver, and I used to look at the sky when I first started working. And so as I was driving, this was in New Jersey on the Garden State Parkway. There's a lot of trees, and it seemed to be taking the shape of a tree. I thought it was a tree. It looked like the top of a tree, like a Christmas tree, and it was flying along with the traffic. And I pulled over to get a better look because it had slowed down. I caught up with it, and it was right over the tree line, as on the side of the highway, and other people slowed down with me and pulled over, and they were behind me. I went and took my phone out at the time, and this was a long time ago, like 20 years ago, and I had an old-ass flip phone, and I unflipped it, and I went to take a picture, and when I looked up, it was just a dot in the sky. It freaking was there, and then it was gone. That was one of them. That one, when I had gotten closer, it no longer looked actually like a tree. It looked like it was morphing, like bubbles, and it was the color of trees. So I don't know if it was like that the whole time.